A team of archaeologists at the University of Oregon have found one of North America's oldest human-occupied sites in southern Oregon.
Massive Ice Age animals and stone tools are rewriting the start of human life in the Americas. At a small rock shelter in Oregon, archaeologists found proof that humans were hunting giant camels 18,000 years ago. This discovery is a huge deal because it happens 5,000 years before the famous Clovis people.
How people respond to climate changes over time. And we're in one right now that we need all the help understanding that we can get.
The ground at Rimrock Draw was perfectly preserved, keeping every tool and bone in its right place for centuries. What most people do not realize is that this one spot destroys every old theory about the first migration. Basically, the history books are now officially out of date. Forgotten shelter breaks history. Rimrock Draw does not look like a place where the world would find a brand new history. It is a simple rock shelter in the high desert of Oregon, far away from the ocean and surrounded by dry, empty land. For a very long time, experts did not think this area mattered at all to the story of the first people in America. The land was considered too cold and too harsh to keep anyone alive during the Ice Age. According to the old rules, people only showed up here much later after the big ice sheets melted away. But when the team from the University of Oregon started digging, they found something that changed everything. For starters, the original plan was just to look at Ice Age animals and see how the weather changed over time. Nobody expected to find signs of humans from 20,000 years ago. As the digging went on, the dirt layers appeared very clean and had not been moved for ages. In most places, tree roots or burrowing animals mess up the ground, making it hard to tell what is old and what is new. But at Rimrock Draw, the layers sat flat and separate, like pages in a giant book. Dark bands showed when people were busy at the shelter, and light bands showed when it was empty. This kind of setup is very rare and means the story told by the dirt is true. As the team went deeper into the soil, stone tools started to show up. These were not just rocks that broke by accident. They were tools made with a plan, featuring sharp edges meant for cutting and scraping. Even more interesting was that these tools were found at many different depths. This means people did not just stop by one time and leave. They came back again and again over thousands of years. The shelter was a special place that early humans remembered and visited on purpose. Every inch they dug pushed the timeline of human life further back into the past. This created a huge problem for the old history books. The tools looked like they were made by skilled hands, and the ground stayed in perfect order. Nothing suggested that the site was messed up or that newer things fell into older holes. The site followed every rule of good science while breaking every rule of the history people learned in school. So here is the deal. The deeper they went, the more the old theories started to fall apart. Truth be told, the experts were looking at a site that had been occupied for nearly 20,000 years. This was not a small mistake in the dates. It was a massive gap that needed to be explained. Volcanic ash locks time. The moment that really changed the game happened deep inside the shelter. Under a thick layer of volcanic ash, the team found teeth and jaw pieces from a giant camel. This was a massive beast that stood nearly 7 feet tall at the shoulder. These camels went extinct in North America a very long time ago, long before humans were supposed to be in Oregon. Finding the bones was a surprise, but how they were found was even bigger. The camel bones were not just lying around like the animal died of natural causes. Instead, they were all grouped together in a way that only happens when someone is butchering an animal for meat. Nature does not organize bones in tight clusters like that. Something with a brain and tools was responsible for this layout. When experts looked closer, they saw clear-cut marks on the bones. These were not random scratches. They were straight, repeated lines right at the joints where meat is cut away from the bone. This is the exact mark left behind by stone tools. There was no other way for those marks to get there. Then there was the volcanic ash. This ash acted like a giant seal over the evidence. Experts know this ash came from an eruption of Mount St. Helens more than 15,600 years ago. When a volcano blows up, the ash falls fast and covers everything like a blanket. Once it settles, anything underneath it is trapped in time. Because the ash layer at Rimrock Draw was perfect and had no holes, anything under it had to be older than the eruption. The camel bones were locked under a geological timestamp that nobody could argue with. Scientists then used special tests to date the camel teeth directly. The results showed the teeth were 18,250 years old. This was not just a guess. It placed human activity thousands of years before the date everyone used to accept. Along with the camel, they found a fresh obsidian flake, which is the sharpest edge in the world. Basically, this ash layer proved that the old timeline was impossible. If people were butchering camels 18,000 years ago, they did not arrive 13,000 years ago. It means they were already thriving in the desert while the rest of the continent was still covered in ice. Microscopic traces in debate. After the camel teeth broke the old timeline, the team needed one more piece of proof. They found it in the stone tools themselves. These were not just quick fixes made by someone in a hurry. They were well-made scrapers made of orange agate. This is a very specific kind of stone that does not exist naturally anywhere near the shelter. The local rocks are different colors and textures. This means the people using these tools had to bring the stone from a long way away. Either they traveled many miles to get it, or they traded with other groups of people. Either way, it shows they were organized and had a plan for survival. They were not just wandering around lost. Under a microscope, the edges of the tools showed wear patterns from being used on animal skin and meat. Small cracks showed exactly how the tools were pressed against hide and bone. These marks look just like the ones made when modern scientists use stone tool copies to skin animals today. These tools were used a lot, not just once. One specific scraper was found even deeper than the camel remains. In a place where the ground has not been moved, the deeper stuff is always older. Since the dirt layers at Rimrock Draw were perfect, this tool proves humans were there even before 18,250 years ago. The biggest proof, however, was invisible to the naked eye. Scientists did a test on the microscopic residue left on the tools. When a stone edge cuts through meat, tiny bits of blood and protein get trapped in small cracks on the tool. These traces dry up and stay there for thousands of years. The tests found blood proteins from an extinct animal called the bison antiquus. This was a massive Ice Age bison that is much bigger than the ones alive today. The protein signature was a perfect match. This meant the tool was definitely used to process a bison carcass. Now the tools, the animals, and the humans were all tied together by biology. The tools were not just lying near the bones by luck. They were the actual items used to hunt and eat those animals nearly 20,000 years ago. Ancient timelines fall apart. For most of the last century, everyone believed the Clovis first theory. This idea said that humans came to North America about 13,000 years ago by walking across a land bridge from Siberia to Alaska. Then they supposedly moved south through a gap in the giant ice sheets. Everything in history was forced to fit into this one story. But Rimrock Draw completely destroys that model using simple geography. 18,000 years ago, North America was in the middle of the last glacial maximum. This means huge ice sheets covered almost all of Canada and blocked the way south. The gap between the ice sheets that the Clovis theory needs did not even exist yet, but humans were already living in Oregon. The only answer that makes sense is that people moved along the coast. Even when the ice was at its thickest, the Pacific coastline was partly open. There were kelp forests in the water that provided plenty of food for people moving south in boats. This journey would have needed boats and good navigation skills. For a long time, people thought early Americans were not smart enough for that, but the tools at Rimrock Draw proved they were very skilled. And the story might go even deeper. Under the camel teeth, there are even older layers of dirt with more stone fragments and signs of people. Experts have not finished looking at these bottom levels yet. In undisturbed ground, deeper always means older. The fact that the site is so well preserved means these lower levels can be trusted. Some small stone pieces found down there already look like the tools found higher up. This suggests people were using the shelter even longer ago than 18,000 years. The digging has not even reached the very bottom of the shelter yet because of money and the need to protect the site. This means the full story is still a mystery. Every layer that has not been touched yet might have more tools or bones that push the date back even further. The people at Rimrock Draw were not just lucky survivors. They chose good spots, knew how to find the best stone, and could hunt the biggest animals in the world during the toughest weather. This level of skill was a huge shock to historians. It forces everyone to rethink what Ice Age humans could actually do. They were not primitive, they were organized groups with their own lands and trade routes. Final conclusions. Rimrock Draw has effectively shattered the glass casing of traditional archaeology, making one thing undeniably clear. The timeline for human presence in the Americas is not merely skewed, it is fundamentally different from what we were led to believe. The narrative taught in classrooms for decades, the comfortable story of a single late migration across a land bridge, is now revealed as an incomplete and increasingly fragile draft of history. We are entering an era where the expertise of the past must be radically reevaluated, and sites once dismissed as outliers or impossible anomalies are demanding a second, more rigorous investigation. The arrogance of assuming that the uppermost strata of the Earth hold the ultimate limits of human history has been exposed as a significant scientific blind spot. For years, deeper geological layers were systematically ignored, relegated to a pre-human past simply because they were deemed too old to fit the accepted archaeological model. We now know that the true beginning of the American story was likely buried beneath these supposedly silent horizons all along, waiting for our technology and our perspective to catch up. If a site of such staggering antiquity remained hidden in the Oregon high desert for millennia, shielded by layers of volcanic ash and the weight of time, it suggests a profound and perhaps unsettling reality. We have barely scratched the surface of our own origin story. The landscape is likely riddled with similar sites waiting to be decoded. Remote caves tucked into the creases of coastal ranges or hidden high mountain passes, once overlooked because they did not fit the correct migration path, may hold the very evidence needed to rewrite our ancestral journey. We are forced to consider that the migration of humans into the Americas was not a singular event, but a complex multi-generational saga of exploration and survival that likely involved multiple routes, including coastal seafaring, that began thousands of years earlier than the Clovis first model ever allowed. The story of how the first people reached these shores is expanding into something far more intricate and perhaps even more radical than current theories suggest. Much of this history remains entombed under meters of soil, ancient ash, and the weight of archaeological dogma, waiting for a shift in perspective to bring it into the light. This shift forces us to look toward the coastlines where ancient settlements now lie submerged under hundreds of feet of ocean water, lost when the glaciers melted and the world changed. Rimrock Draw represents more than just a collection of stone tools. It is the first major crack in a dam of historical certainty. As we dig deeper, both physically and theoretically, every new discovery possesses the potential to dismantle the existing narrative and replace it with a truth that is significantly older, wider, and more mysterious than we ever dared to imagine. Now, the real question is, if humans were here 20,000 years ago, how much earlier did they actually arrive? Could there be sites twice as old hidden right under our feet? Let us know what you think in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into the deep past, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more mysteries of ancient history.